And I'll call this meeting of the State Government Finance and Elections Committee to order. We're holding this meeting remotely pursuant to House Rule 10.01. The committee legislator, our legislative assistant, will call the roll.
Chair Nelson,
I'm here.
Vice Chair Carlson,
Carlson present.
Representative Nash,
Present.
Representative Bonner, Representative Drazkowski, Representative Elkins, Representative Greenman,
Present.
Representative Cleaborn,
Cleaborn, present.
Representative Kosnick,
Cosmic present.
Representative Mason, Representative New Brindley,
Present.
Representative Pulowski,
Present.
Representative Quam. A quorum is present.
Thank you. And members, we have the minutes from our last meeting. Representative Claiborne, you want to move the minutes?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I move the minutes of our last meeting to be adopted as written. Thank you.
Motion is made to approve the minutes from the January 21st meeting. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? We have our minutes approved. Start out the meeting, we have a short presentation by Commissioner Schowalter from the Minnesota Management and Budgets. Welcome to the committee, Commissioner. If you want to state your name for the record and proceed with your presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. For the record, my name is Jim Schowalter, Commissioner of Minnesota Management and Budget. I just appreciate the opportunity for you and the committee to take some time to hear about the work of MMB and what we do on behalf of the state. Hope the audio is okay. I should also just point out, if there's questions along the way, please let me know. I'm happy to entertain questions. It's just so that we can really address the things that you want to hear about most. Let's see. I think one of the things that is a particular treat for me is that I have addressed this committee before as commissioner, and it's really a new place of coming back to MMB. It is an unusual situation, frankly, where one can take a role like this and come back, learn from being on the outside, and come back and see how the agency has changed, how it's grown up, how it's developed. We merged and created MMB from two different departments, Employee Relations and the Department of Finance. And I like to think of it as the place where people count. And I use that phrase really intentionally because many people think of MMB as a place, where the green eye shades, the bean counters are at, because we do finance, we do accounting. But it's also the place where people count, that we do the human resources. We help understand that employees are a critical talent and resource for the state to do its work. And looking forward, to also know that people count, that by counting, we are seeing how progress occurs. Where are we making progress? Where are we getting results? And it's kind of the place where MMB is a really small agency, but it reaches into every corner of state government. MMB serves all Minnesotans by working to ensure the state government is effective and transparent, fair, innovative, and always striving to improve. Now, later today, you're going to see MMB's role in the state budgeting process, and that'll be at the forefront. But our activities extend well beyond this function, and I'll be spending some time today just highlighting some of those aspects of the work, as well as our dedicated employees. Our mission, I'm sure you're asking all the agencies, what are the mission? What does your agency do? Ours is to be stewards of the state's financial and human resources, delivering effective services for the people of Minnesota. We support more than 56,000 employees in the state workforce who deliver those services and provide resources necessary for them to do their job well. We have about 265 employees. Our general fund budget is about $27 million. and we're responsible for or significantly involved in carrying out about 1,800 statutory requirements. So that's about 3 statutory requirements for every employee. And sometimes we get calls in the middle of our presentations. Um, uh, we coordinate budget process for more than 100 state agencies, boards, and commissions. We maintain human resource policy for recruitment, for retention and talent. We train, we manage $8 billion in public debt. We pay thousands of vendors that supply goods and services to the public. We process payroll for the state workforce, administer the state employee group insurance program, produce budget forecasts, negotiate with 13 different labor union bargaining group units. And those are just some of the activities that we're responsible for. So when you see people's payroll, when you actually the house payroll comes through, when you see a forecast, when you have an insurance card, all of those things are ultimately coming through and being worked by the staff at MMB. But before we get in too far into the testimony today, I just wanted to sort of make it a little bit more personal because
And Commissioner Joe, 1 second. We have a Ryan Church that has joined and I don't know who he is. Is that from
Ryan,
your?
he is. Ryan is our deputy commissioner.
That's
And
good. That's what we need to know. Thank you. Go ahead then.
all right. Just to call out Ryan, and it's kind of the skill base that we've got. Ryan has been a deputy at revenue, at administration, and he's our acting deputy at this moment as well. I'm really pleased to have him on board with all his experience. One thing, it seems like people sometimes think that state government just does the same thing over and over again. And that is just so not the case, and certainly wasn't the case in this past 12 months. How do you respond to COVID-19? How do you track resources and programs that haven't been created before? That was one of the challenges that MMB was given this year. And the COVID-19 Response Accountability Office came together in June to track and monitor COVID-19 related state appropriations and federal funds. We didn't have an office. We basically repurposed some of our existing staff, and Amy Jorgensen, MMB's Director of Internal Controls, was tasked to run the office. It's a glorified name because really it was Amy. And once in a while, it was a couple of people that we were able to put with their team. But slowly we grew that group, and they started managing the budgeting and accounting for all the relief funding that was coming through, particularly the aid that went to more than 1,600 local governments, giving them procedures, a system to report, and helping give them guidance as we are working through changing federal guidance and understanding of what was necessary. This is a new office, an unprecedented work environment, never been done before. She had 2 full-time employees, eventually Josh Botnan and Maya Wahlberg, and 3 additional staff balancing the work of the COVID response with their other roles. The team created processing and ways to get the state and federal fund reported back to the federal government as was required, coordinated training and reporting for all of the cities, towns, and organizations across the state, and compiles all of that data for our state transparency site as well as for federal reporting. We also are on the cutting edge of identifying opportunities where we could get FEMA reimbursement to extend those resources so Minnesotans could respond to the pandemic. That's kind of the problem solving that MMB is often tossed into, and we rely on the experience and the talent of our people. Amy Jorgensen, the head of this team, is no stranger to the state government. She served at the state of Minnesota for more than 20 years at the Office of Legislative Auditor, at the Departments of Health and Revenue, and now at MMB. She's recently the director of the Enterprise Internal Controls team, where she helped agencies safeguard public resources and minimize instances of fraud and waste and abuse. She's a CPA, she's detailed, professional, and also is able to work on the fly. I can't imagine how we would have done this without her. So these are the kinds of things and challenges that MMB works on. There's other examples where we've dropped people in to situations that are unclear or uncertain. And I just, again, appreciate all of the work that is being done across the agency. Angela Vogt is another example. She's a team leader in budgets. You'd think she'd been working on the governor's budget for the last 3 months. No, we actually deployed her to go work over on COVID so that she could help figure out what was happening with testing, pull together resources and bolster the team over there so that the financial management team there would have a better ability to track and allocate CARES Act funding and stand up a business of about a $2 billion business in weeks. The question of how we keep on trying to get things done is a matter of versatility and commitment that I'm just really proud of being a part of and proud of what the agency brings to the state. These are parts of our strategic plan. We're working to realize One Minnesota's vision, to make Minnesota the best state in the country for our kids to grow up in and do so in a way that brings people together and builds One Minnesota. MMB is committed to making decisions based on good data, trusted experts, and community insights. We're committed to modernizing state government. For example, refreshing our use of technology or piloting new business approaches. And we're committed to supporting and energizing a talented workforce and creating an inclusive workplace. We're committed to delivering enterprise services in a collaborative and holistic manner. And finally, we're committed to directing and modeling responsible and transparent fiscal management. You see those strategies in everything that we do. And we know that that's part of the way we help our partners achieve their missions and goals. A key initiative right now for us is work on equity and inclusion. We know that we have a lot of work to do. Our enterprise human capital team and the Office of the Chief Inclusion Officer are inside of MMB and are looking at and working on ways to support inclusive organization structures and incorporate this work in our organizational processes and procedures. And ultimately, how do we continue to diversify state leadership? Equity and inclusion isn't a program, it's a core value, and it needs to be ingrained in our daily operations. Ultimately, MMB is about and sees all the time the importance of having different people, different skills, different backgrounds. That is ultimately part of the core need and urgency that we making sure that we have employees with rich backgrounds, with diverse experiences, so that we can ultimately provide the best service possible, drive innovation, and build a better Minnesota. The agency itself is divided into 6 different parts: accounting, budget, enterprise human capital, debt management, enterprise communication and planning, and agency administration. Accounting services, you probably understand the best. It's the backbone of the state's financial operations, require statutorily required infrastructure for effective accounting and payroll services throughout the state. The division operates through 3 sections: payroll services, statewide accounting, and SWIFT system support. All 3 sections establish and maintain statewide financial policies and procedures to safeguard assets and ensure compliance with legal requirements. They also are there to help provide advice and consultation and technical assistance to agencies. Budget services is also probably a familiar team for many of you. That team provides comprehensive budget assistance, guidance, and oversight for state agencies. That's the team that creates the information and tools for decision makers, whether through information on budgets, budget pages, fiscal notes, and ultimately helps communicate fiscal policy statewide. The staff develops and coordinates the operating and capital budget proposals and also support the legislative budget process. We'll maintain and publish fund statements, the state's bottom line, for the general fund and all the other funds, and work with accounting services and debt management to make sure that we're monitoring agency spending and ensure that operations are consistent with legislative decisions. Debt management is a little different. It may not always associate with MMB, but it's right there. It oversees about $8 billion of public debt. So when we talk about bond sales, capital budgets, and those measures that are passed by the legislature, a lot happens in between the authorization of that debt and actually getting the money, making sure it's implemented and the bond proceeds are used in a wise and legal manner, doing all the reporting and work with Wall Street to maintain so that we can continue borrowing in the future. Our rating right now is at the highest level for Standard & Poor's and Fitch, with one step below for Moody's. They're at a AA1. Enterprise human capital. Most agencies have their own internal HR shop, but MMB is responsible for providing guidance and direction for all aspects of the state employee work across the enterprise. Enterprise human capital supports MMB's mission to provide effective and efficient public services by helping recruit and retain, develop qualified, highly motivated employees. There's a number of units within this that includes labor relations, enterprise learning and development, recruiting and retention, compensation and classification, state employee group insurance program, research policies and projects. The team runs 3 statewide systems that process employee information and benefits training for and processes over 19,000 job applications a month. Labor Relations negotiates 9 contracts with state employee bargaining units and many more things. I'm just going to pause here for a second. I can't see it on my screen, but I understand there's a hand up. So sorry for that.
Representative Mass, I think you want to wait till the end of the presentation, I think is what you want to do.
Yes, please.
Okay,
Okay.
go ahead, Commissioner.
Sorry about that.
That's okay.
So I'm talking about the HR team and some of the things that they do. This state employee group insurance program administers the state's largest self-insured healthcare pool, with providing benefits for over 129,000 employees, dependents, and retirees across all 3 branches of state government, Minnesota State University, and some quasi-government entities. Enterprise communications and planning works to ensure that employees and agencies have the tools and information they need to effectively do their work. Members of this team are proactive and work on inclusive planning strategies to help share information throughout our agency and enterprise. 5 different units in here, all of which play a key role. One is internal control and accountability, the team I talked about before that Amy Jorgensen normally runs. They help to look at and are created under law to design and implement effective internal controls so that we keep on learning from any mistakes that have been made in the past. We keep on learning, we spread that learning to across the businesses. Our business continuity unit provides leadership and so that we can respond to a disaster, quickly resume priority services, minimize loss, and repair damaged equipment and facilities in a timely manner. As you would expect, continuity is a very busy area this past year. Getting in place so that we can work in a remote fashion, as well as being really integral to all of the work that the state is doing to set up a vaccination team and work through testing operations on a continuous basis, supporting long-term care and all the other work that the state is doing. A separate group is our communications unit, responsible for collaborating with states to get out key information and information. They manage our websites, our data requests, media inquiries, social media, publications, internal communications, outreach, and once in a while events. And finally, our enterprise resource planning unit works closely with business and IT staff. The management analysis and development section, known as MAD, is also a group that you might bump into from time to time. MAD exists under law to support the commissioner's requirement to, quote, provide analytical, statistical, and organizational development services to state agencies and other public entities in the state, end quote. The team is 19 people, and they receive no general fund support. They're a fee-for-service management consulting group. And though their rates are a lot more competitive than those you see in the private sector, they're really successful, and they've been a great resource for state agencies and outside organizations. And they've been helping the state improve since 1985. Agency administration handles all those functions for the employees at MMB. We're sometimes like the shoemaker whose kids don't have shoes. So fortunately, we have a team that takes care of that. Administrative fiscal services, agency HR, and strategic planning are all handled and coordinated through this team. We have about 70 different legislative mandated reports and is always quite busy with that activity. Also, I just want to say that this group was responsible for successfully executing the premium insurance subsidy rebate program passed by the legislature in 2017. So I feel like I've gone on probably long enough to give you a taste of what we're doing. Obviously, COVID-19 has changed a lot of our activities. It's raised the challenge of urgency and innovation, and I think our team has really risen to that challenge. I know that across the state, employees have spent 1.8 million hours working on COVID-19 related efforts. And I'm just astounded by the challenge and the innovation necessary to respond to that challenge. And I'm just honored to be part of that team. It takes a lot of strength and resiliency, and our state workforce has been up to it. MMB has been at the center of those efforts. We've managed federal and state funding. We've helped guide and assess the economic and budget impacts. We've aided in reassignment and redeployment in staff throughout state government. And we've maintained our normal functions throughout through telework, even while helping throw some of our expertise directly into the mix. So, it's been a really exciting and busy year. And I just want to thank you for the time to introduce MMB, some of the work that we do, and let you know that it is a small agency, but its impact is enormous. We continue to take on more responsibilities, and it's my job as a leader to make sure that we manage those things well, because we take all of our responsibilities seriously, and because everything we do is for the betterment of Minnesotans. I'm impressed by the professionalism of this team, and I just want to let you know just how amazing the team has been, both in bringing me in and getting me up to speed, continuing to do unprecedented work without missing a beat, and continuing to get the things that you would expect to be done at MMB done somehow within the 24 hours of a day. They're dedicated public servants, and I really appreciate the chance to testify before the committee. Mr. Chair, happy to take that question that came up before or any others that come up.
Thank you. And the commissioner, I understand, has to leave by 9:15. So we at 9:15 will excuse him and let him go, and then we'll go on to our next presentation. Representative Nash, you have a question.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair and Commissioner. Appreciate the presentation. In the second to the last slide, you did indicate the recognition of a budget deficit that's going to be heading our way. In the conversation that you've had in your office and with the agencies and departments that you support, have you begun a conversation about what it looks like to head into this biennium doing their job with less income or less revenue for them to work with, because we are very likely going to have to make some significant cuts, and just wondering if that's in your conversation and how that has what fruit that has borne thus far, because I'm sure you've begun talking about that. If you could detail that, and maybe detail with the communications you've had with the governor as well, that'd be greatly appreciated.
Commissioner.
Sure. Mr. Chair, Representative, thank you for the question. And you're absolutely right. This year has been one of those years where both myself and my predecessor have communicated to state agencies repeatedly the limitations of resources, the necessity of getting things done with whatever we have or with less. It started last spring, where there was a hiring freeze that was implemented across state government. That helped slow and basically started to create some sort of messaging and financial savings, knowing full well that we had a financial crisis on our hands. That crisis turned out to be not as bad as expected, but we still have that hiring freeze on. And so what we're doing is making sure that each agency, as well as MMB, are carefully scrutinizing any hires so that we can be as lean as possible and continue to deliver services as well as we can during this pandemic period. That is certainly part of it. Part of it is also a redeployment. At an enterprise level, we're taking people with certain skill sets. They might be working in the environmental agencies, but we're asking them, because they're good planners, to help us think through how to deliver vaccines and stand up an operation of a supply chain. So we're taking resources and making sure that we're using everyone to their maximum extent. On a financial basis, you should know that the governor's budget will be released in just a couple of hours. At that point, you're going to get detailed information on all state agencies. And you should know, first of all, that every state agency's got some stories that will either come before this committee or their own committee to talk about some of the things that they've been doing to ratchet down spending, to get efficiencies, to find ways of doing things differently. Because we understand that at the end of the day, efficient state government is incredibly important. I would also argue, coming back into the state, just to have you and other legislators remember that at the same time, we can't assume that the capacity is there if we don't find ways to fund it. So I think there's a push and a pull, and I think we're going to have to be really precise about what it is that we want out of state agencies. And if we do want to have fewer expenses, if we do want to reduce it, we're going to have to find ways to reduce exactly what we're asking for, because right now that universe seems to be expanding. And I'm proud of that because that's been what's necessary to respond to the pandemic and respond to the moment.
Representative Nash.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. And Commissioner, I certainly understand that there are going to be more requests and things that people would like to get done, and even demands from internal and possibly external stakeholders. But I do think that it's something that has to be realized that there likely will be a need to look internally to find projects that won't get done this year. And I'm grateful that you've begun that conversation, but just knowing what the likelihood is going to be, I would hope that you, the governor, and all that you're speaking with are looking at the next biennium or this biennium in the hopeful viewpoint, but also the realistic viewpoint of having significantly less revenue to deal with, and prioritizing some of the spends. Certainly there are things that are worthy. Certainly there are things that we'd all like to see done, but much like a household budget, in my household and all of our households, you flex to the amount of revenue that you have. And I would hope that the conversations that you're having with both stakeholders and the governor is reflective of that, because Minnesotans are watching. They are asking us to dig into the budget and find the things that we don't need to do right now and put them off, because we can't tax our way into prosperity. And I'm just wondering if that is indeed the types of conversations that you're having with all the stakeholders and the governor.
Mr. Chair, Representative, I appreciate that. And absolutely, those are the conversations that we're having. I would just like to point out that the current funding level doesn't necessarily even do all of the things that one would expect are currently being achieved. So for an example, the expenses for the direct care and treatment facilities, or some of the correctional facilities that were adopted in the seventh special session. I'm getting my special sessions mixed up. But there was funding to help make sure that those facilities were funded through the current biennium, but there is not funding for the next biennium. So there's, even just to keep things going, there are going to be significant expenses that are necessary, unless the legislature and the governor agree to significantly reduce or change some of those operations. We've had some of those conversations, but also recognize that current operations have impact, and some of those expenses are not funded into the future. So you look into other parts of the budget. I know the transit budget is another one, whereas you're going to see significant impacts due to lower ridership and operational impacts going from there. Across the budget, those are the kinds of questions that happen regularly between MMB, between state agencies and the governor and his staff, so that we can provide a set of options and a detailed blueprint. And that's what he'll be releasing in a couple hours.
Representative Nash, I'm going to move to the next question.
Yep,
Representative New Brindley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Commissioner Showalter. Thanks so much for being here. Um, I'm hoping you can go into a little bit more detail about the hiring freeze. We ran into an issue, and I apologize because you, I'm afraid, have to answer for some of your predecessor, which is not always perfect. But we were told that there were potentially, I think, $8 million in savings, but of course we couldn't capture those unless we codified them. So we worked on doing that during one of the special sessions, and then we were told, well, there wasn't really there weren't really specifics on that, and the information on your website appears to show that there are actually 12.9 more general fund FTEs now than there were at the beginning of that hiring freeze, and there are 402 additional other FTEs. So can you talk a little bit more about that hiring freeze and where those savings are being captured and what those real numbers are?
Yeah,
Commissioner.
Chair, Mr. Chair, Representative, excellent question. So I don't have those specific numbers, but let me just talk it through a little bit, and I'll try to get to hopefully answer your question. The hiring freeze does have exceptions. So like if you look at the hiring freeze, it's not like nobody would be hired, because if that were the case, you'd be looking at a blank screen. Now, I was hired since that time, and there are instances where we do need to fill positions. So that is certainly the case. Now, there is a certain seasonality to employment. There's in the parks, in other places, there's ups and downs. So I can't speak to like exactly like, well, what is it today versus another point in time? I do know for sure that there's a couple of big impacts. One is that we have seen significantly slower and lower fills, so that a lot of the positions that have gone open have not been filled. In addition, I do know that there has been a slowdown in the turnover in state workforce, that the recession has had another impact that was kind of unexpected at the time, hadn't quite thought it through all the ramifications, was that the churn wasn't going to be quite as much as initially expected. Bottom line is there are savings. As was discussed in previous special sessions, I think you'll see that probably articulated more clearly today in the governor's budget recommendations. And that is ultimately part of that operating budget challenge for state agencies to assess which positions they really need to keep things going and which ones they can defer till a later date. I'll look into the numbers that you talked about because having looked at the hiring freeze a couple of times myself, I know that there's a number of different, that the devil is always in the details between the seasonal, the full-time equivalents, the points in time of the year, just because it isn't like the state workforce is a stagnant number. So I'd prefer to just take a look at that, and Laura or myself can get back to you and give you a little bit more information.
New Brindley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Commissioner. I appreciate that. I think that information would be very helpful. Like I said, when we tried to actually capture those savings, they weren't there. So if you could identify that, that would be helpful. I'm also curious to know, I know that the intention was to implement sort of early retirement incentives, and I'm wondering if you have any report on that and how that process is going.
Yeah,
Commissioner.
Mr. Chair, Representative, great question again. So yes, a early retirement incentive program was forwarded to the SER late in 2020, and reflects MOUs with all of the major unions of the state. Was developed by MMB, patterned in some ways after the ERI that was created. It was back when I was commissioner again. I was like around 2010, 2011, something like that. It at this moment, it's probably not going to have a huge effect, to be perfectly honest. Agencies have the option of opting in, but I think the combination of tight budget situations, hiring freezes, and are creating a place where agencies aren't sure that they can handle more churn. And while they've got a little bit more time to look at it, at this moment in time, I'm not expecting that ERI to have a large scale impact on the state labor force. I think it's going to be more targeted, but it is, again, one of those tools, because ultimately MMB is here to put tools in the toolbox for managers and agencies so that they can make the decisions of how to get the best workforce, how to manage most efficiently. And we'll see how that works out in the next month or two. I think agencies have I know they have at least another month to opt in.
Move on. Representative
Thank
Cosnick,
you.
did you have a question? I'll get back to you, New Brindley. Representative Cosnick, did you have a question? We're going short on time here with the commission.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I know the budget's coming out later, but Commissioner, we're asking our businesses to figure out new and creative ways to provide for their employees, to keep their businesses afloat, to provide for their families. What is the first couple taxes that you're asking families, individuals, and businesses that you're going to be raising, your administration's going to be raising to pay for this growth in government?
Great question, Mr. Chair.
Commissioner.
The budget plan will be announced, I think, at noon today at a press conference, and happy to take questions on the budget at that point in time. Just so you know, for MMB and as a state agency, one of the things that I was taught when in my 20 years coming up through the civil service and working on budgets, whether for Governors Pawlenty or Ventura or Dayton, was it's the uniform distribution of disappointment. It is a document that it tries to take balance the competing needs of our current financial situation, of our citizens, of our different areas of activity, and try to find some way through it to best serve Minnesotans. And so I'm just really proud again that amidst all the work that is being done, how many press conferences have we had and discussions about vaccination or COVID-19 in the past couple of weeks? How many urgent public crises have happened in the last couple of weeks? Amidst all that, we have put the final decisions in place and we'll be releasing the governor's budget in a couple of hours. So I'm sure we'll have a chance to address it then.
Representative Cosnick.
I'm sure we'll be revisiting and having further discussion on the taxing increases that are proposed in the later on budget. And I understand why he doesn't want to comment on the specific taxes now, and that's fair. But I just don't know that continuing to tax the wealthy, as we're hearing, is really the long-term solution for growing our economy and right-sizing government. I think we're moving in the wrong direction, but we'll have that discussion later. Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you.
And members of the commissioner has to get going so that he can get to the conference and get to deal with the other things that he has to deal with today. So thank you, Commissioner, for your time. I know there are more questions but we ran out of time here. So thank you, Commissioner, and members. We'll move on to the next presentation.
Thank you.
And our next presentation is from Minnesota Information and Technology, Minnesota IT. Commissioner Tomes.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and committee members. I hope my audio is okay.
I can hear you fine.
Excellent. For the record, my name is Tarek Tomes, and I'm the Commissioner of Minnesota IT Services and the Chief Information Officer for the state of Minnesota. And also, as Commissioner Schowalter mentioned, really appreciate the opportunity to share with this committee some of the work that we have done over the last 12 months, just to provide an overview of our agency and to certainly answer questions that committee members may have. I have a few members of my team here as well, just in case. Next slide, Brendan. So just in terms of a little bit of background about Minute as an organization, and before diving into these numbers, just wanted to echo one of the things that Commissioner Schowalter just referenced that I do think is a really significant point to highlight: the interagency work that we have seen during the pandemic has been really, really incredible. And we've seen teams with tremendous agility from many different organizations come together to quickly iterate, evolve, and find creative solutions and opportunities for Minnesotans, just as it relates to the pandemic response. And Commissioner Schowalter and his team at MMB has really been extraordinary. And a really recent example is the incredible work by the results team that worked together with our team at Minute related to data visualization capabilities that brought about a COVID-19 dashboard that is really helping to drive positive benefits related to just how quickly we're able to move vaccine around in the state and just the transparency associated with something that is so important. Minute as an organization, we have approximately 2,500 staff members working in 90 different locations across the state. We are generally, just conceptually, one of the hats that we wear, we're the internal IT organization for the executive branch of state government. We support 35,000 executive branch users spread across the various agencies. We provide services in 87 counties, 300 cities, higher education, schools, colleges, universities. So really have a footprint across the entirety of Minnesota. Beyond the executive branch, the really preponderance and majority of the services that we provide beyond the executive branch are network related and certainly cybersecurity related, including really important cybersecurity coordination and leadership. We support approximately 2,800 line of business applications that kind of power the business of government or the executive branch of government. And within those 2,800 applications, certainly the various transactions that allow us to understand and support our business users and Minnesotans with service delivery. And those applications and those services are provided in about 1,300 locations. In terms of new work that is continually ongoing, our project portfolio generally is about 350 to 400 projects in size, everything from really major technology initiatives to smaller projects. But within that is a lot of opportunity and certainly a lot of innovation and a lot of change and modernization that is really critical for the state. We support about 7,000 servers, the vast majority of those being virtual and have a really, really heavy footprint as it relates to consuming, in our language, what's referred to as cloud-based services. And certainly also want to recognize Representative Nash as a member of our Blue Ribbon Council on Technology and just a incredible contributor in that space for the work that is needed for Minnesotans. Next slide, Brandon. As it relates to the last 12 months, if you will, and the COVID response, we really have had probably three large personas that we have pursued and certainly have had some intentionality in terms of understanding what those three personas are. One of those personas is really just enabling a remote workforce of executive branch workers and providing for all the capabilities that they may need, everything from security to access to devices to support. Just sharing a few of the numbers. Early on in the pandemic, we immediately, probably a few days earlier, as we certainly were in a really critical role of anticipating what's coming next, anticipated that the move to a remote working structure was a very viable possibility as we were just watching what was unfolding across the globe. Quickly enabled our executive branch workers to work remotely, trained up almost 8,000 employees as it relates to collaboration tools and video technology, knowing that collaboration tools and these online collaboration and video spaces were going to be instrumental and kind of a train the trainer aspect. And that's everything from individual meeting rooms to doing pardon hearings online for the first time. And so the collaboration and video and remote capabilities that the pandemic has required really encompassed a lot of really broad things. We saw a 450% increase in technical support calls with people moving remotely. As a proxy measure of how well is the executive branch able to work remotely, in March of 2019, and this is prior to the pandemic, the executive branch sent about 5.2 million emails. And in March of 2020, kind of in the middle of the pandemic, the executive branch sent 7.5 million emails out. And certainly, that extra volume, some of that is pandemic related and the need to communicate with so many different stakeholder universe and communicate with Minnesotans. But I think it's also a little bit of a proxy measure of the hyper productive state that executive branch workers and public servants in Minnesota are in, that in a world where we send people home, they're working remotely, they're dealing with all the same challenges that all of us and the rest of society is dealing with, caring for maybe elderly parents, relatives, homeschooling kids, multiple people working remotely at home. All of our employees have those same challenges. And in that challenged environment, the executive branch still was able to see this hyper productive reaction, which I think is largely fueled by in the technology work that has happened to enable that remote working posture. We have 100% of state employees that use multi-factor authentication, really, really critical when we move the workforce remotely. We, at the same time, doubled down on our multi-factor authentication needs or the requirement to have our workforce and our business community commissioners, deputy commissioners really broadly supported that. And we knew that while sending people home, adding an extra layer, may cause a little bit of extra complexity in a time that's really stressful, but everyone recognized the criticality of really doubling down on a remote construct where we go from working in known network locations to really disseminating our workforce across thousands and thousands of networks, everything from home networks to, possibly a Starbucks or a Kowalski's or a library or wherever someone may be sitting. And I think that move during the pandemic really was just tremendously successful and a vital move for Minnesota. Next slide. So another persona then is supporting Minnesota's needs and the various things that changed during the pandemic related to state systems. Everything from supporting MDH with the community testing sites, over 225 community testing sites where we provided technology support. The many changes in unemployment insurance, a digital online experience that the business side team at Deed and technologists at Deed really have done just incredible work. I would, probably argue, and I don't have necessarily any numbers to back this, but I think it's not going too far out on a limb to say that Minnesota and the unemployment insurance program and Minnesota's ability to both take in unemployment insurance requests as well as to pay out benefits and implement changes that are coming from the federal level, I would guess we were best in the country. The Deed business side unemployment insurance team and the technology underpinnings and the around-the-clock work that public servants have put in to making sure that Minnesotans have access to resources in the fastest way possible has been just incredible. At DPS, the implementation of a really critical initiative to move from the well-known MNLARS driver and vehicle platform to the FAST platform, even during the pandemic, was delivered on time. And a lot of innovation at DPS. The leadership is just incredible. A lot of innovation offering an ability to renew driver's licenses online led to 30,000 Minnesotans renewing driver's licenses online. They didn't have to go down to a driver vehicle testing location. They didn't have to stand in line during a pandemic. Certainly a tremendous example of digital services, if you will, as well as providing an ability to take knowledge tests online. Similarly, special open enrollment period for MNsure and the work that has gone into providing increased innovation and agility for supporting those Minnesotans that receive EBT benefits. An example of that is a text messaging, bidirectional text opt-in text messaging service that was developed that notifies EBT recipients that they have a new benefit available on their EBT cards. And in clear text, what that may mean is that in the morning, someone may wake up and know that, you know, they have the ability to go buy breakfast for their family. And it's just, you know, really heartfelt work that over and over and over, I've been lucky enough to witness Minnesota public servants just working tirelessly around the clock, trying to create ways to really help Minnesotans in these difficult times. Next slide, Brandon. And then the last persona, and certainly a critical persona, is what we refer to just COVID response innovation, or how can technology actually change the trajectory of COVID-19 in Minnesota. Everything from enabling chatbot, AI chatbot capability that generally handles over 10,000 conversations a month. You can see that chatbot at mn.gov. You can ask it questions. It provides answers. It gives us insight into how we can continue to train that chatbot to answer questions more intuitively. And at a peak, answered 40,000 daily conversations. And I think it's a little bit of a snapshot of the type of innovation that we hope to proliferate to other spaces when we think about, you know, the budget challenges and the constraints and the role that technology will likely play in helping to meet some of those budget challenges in terms of innovative opportunities that allow for effective delivery of services, maybe in a reduced, from a reduced cost perspective, just because of the role that innovation can play in finding new ways to do things. Certainly all the work that's gone into the COVID site, we developed in partnership with Target, a symptom screener that is still in use. It was a really, I think, a really collaborative and innovative partnership, private sector, public sector partnership. And then last but not least, and there are more examples of this, but an example to reference is the COVID Aware MN exposure notification system that has well over 900,000, almost 930,000 Minnesotans that have opted into this exposure notification system, over 15% of the population, that certainly plays a role in helping to reduce the spread of COVID-19. I think we've had probably 4,000 to 5,000 Minnesotans that have entered a code into this application and notified others in this data privacy centric opt-in solution that really augments other measures such as masking and social distancing. Next slide, Brendan. So just real quickly, you know, a little bit on where we're going. Our mission statement at Minute is to help support and create the most innovative digital government that works for everyone. And we approach our work with a laser focus on the people that are impacted by technology and including them in the conversations. And that doesn't mean that we always get it right the first time. What that means is that we continue to iterate and continue to evolve how technology can best serve people. And certainly throughout this pandemic, we have seen many examples of that. Next slide. So just real quickly on our goal areas, and in case we have not sent to the committee, I apologize. We will make sure the committee has a number of artifacts that we produce on a regular basis. We produce a quarterly report. We produce a year-end report, and also to make sure that the committee has our strategic planning documents. 5 major strategic pillars, if you will, with one being kind of one that permeates throughout everything, and that's what we refer to as our connected culture. And it's all about the relationships that we create with each other, with our agency partners, with the legislature, with Minnesotans, just our pursuit of really understanding the role and the opportunities that technology plays and how we can best connect with Minnesotans to support and provide the best government services possible. Fortifying the delivery of projects, that's that 350 to 400 projects, and just making sure that the methodologies that we use, the approaches that we use to deliver those projects result in delivering value as fast as possible in a really consistent way and in a really heavy focus on agile project delivery methodologies. The third pillar is really focused on digital and people-centered digital government services. And an example, of that would be the online driver's license renewal, but just continually looking for areas where we can digitize services. Certainly the world, private sector, public sector has seen that those organizations that provide services to people that have a high degree of digitization, they have fared the best during the pandemic. If you think about Starbucks, for example, and the ability to order a cup of Starbucks remotely and then just walk in and grab it, allowed them to continue to serve their customer base. And we've seen examples of that in government, in the public sector, and in the private sector. But I think the continued pursuit of those digital opportunities is really important. Elevating our digital estate. This really speaks to those 2,800 line of business applications and the many transactions and the data that is held within those applications. And how can we lift that data to help inform decisions as effectively as possible, to continue to support a data-driven decision-making mechanism. And probably the most recent and a really great example is the work that we collaborated on with the Department of Health and the MMB results team and our really amazing data visualization technologist at Minute to bring that vaccine dashboard out. That is probably the most popular page currently on our mn.gov COVID response site. And then last but not least, and it's certainly, sometimes it's difficult to place next to any of these because it is, one that maybe sits bigger and more important than everything else, is just to do everything that we can to continue to bolster our cybersecurity efforts. Next slide, Brandon. So from a cybersecurity perspective, in 2020, we saw almost 3,000 cybersecurity incidents, and that's of varying sizes. Connected to the tragic killing of George Floyd, we saw 14 consecutive days of denial of service attacks. And during that time, the investments that have been made, including during the last budget cycle, really allowed us to get to a place where the tools and technologies that we have, where we were able to defend the state and the state systems against, really that unprecedented volume. And it was quite unprecedented. We pull in vendors, we pull in partners. Our websites in the state stayed and maintained well over 90% availability. And those types of denial of service attacks, although they're not generally as ferocious and targeted as something like that, they really impact the most vulnerable Minnesotans. You may not be able to access an unemployment insurance system, or you may not be able to reach a suicide prevention hotline. And so our investment in making sure that we continue to build up our defenses as much as possible is really critical. The work that we did as it relates to election security and monitoring the infrastructure, the network infrastructure that connected the various polling locations that carried some of that traffic, as well as the larger educational and leadership role that we played in helping to educate things that could be done to continue to improve that mechanism, really vital. From a cybersecurity perspective, I generally, look at the things that we have seen, including, the well publicized SolarWinds vulnerability that impacted many organizations across the country and across the world, really, the civil unrest connected events. Our level of investment, we're right at that level where we barely have what is necessary to defend, and we have to continue to invest in this space. It is really, really critical. Any inch less could have really resulted in significant impacts to the state of Minnesota. And I could not underscore enough the need to continue to invest in this space, as well as in the critical partnerships. Next slide, Brandon. So just to give a little bit of an idea of the funding increase that was made and where some of that went, certainly advanced threat protections, generally referred to as ATP, anti-malware solutions. We have seen a significant decrease in events just related to an investment in those areas. Cyber insurance, which is really, really important to help offset impacts from larger events. We conduct employee phishing campaigns on a monthly basis. Essentially, we send out phishing attacks across the executive branch, and we kind of vary the complexity of those, like how hard to discover, so that we have kind of a baseline of how vulnerable we are, and then launch proactively really critical education campaigns. They're never meant to shame or anything like that. They're really intended to help us understand how effective are our education campaigns for our employees, to help them spot malicious intent from the types of things that we receive. And then, certainly our ability to invest in kind of the investigative type tools that were really so critical as it relates to the SolarWinds, to really just assess across such a large landscape where vulnerabilities may exist. And I could not be more impressed with the leadership of our security office, from the Chief Information Security Officer, Roy Tandon, to his newly appointed Deputy, John Israel. Just an incredible amount of know-how and leadership, and just the security professionals that exist within the state. Next slide. So just real quick now on kind of how we work and what the operating model looks like. So our funding really is split broadly across a couple of different buckets. We are organized in a manner very similar to other large, complex organizations that have diversity in operating units, like a Cargill or a 3M. We have dedicated technologists that sit side by side, that sit at agency locations, that work really closely and intimately with some of those critical line of business applications that are unique for an agency. And then we have a staff of enterprise technologists that help with overall enterprise initiatives or enterprise services and strategy. And you can see kind of the split there. It's about a 67-33% split. From a funding perspective, this
Commissioner, if you can wrap up. We've got questions, and we have another presentation, and we'll have IT questions for them. So if you can wrap up quickly here.
You bet. I'll go through this slide, the next couple slides really fast, almost at the end. So this slide here, and I'll leave it for you to look at, just breaks down what the total funding, and as you can see, half the funding for a minute goes to personnel. Next slide, Brendan. Oh, that's the last slide. And I also wanted to make sure to recognize Representative Bonner and her amazing contributions to the Blue Ribbon Council as well. Mr. Chair, that concludes our presentation, and certainly I would love to stand for questions.
The first question I have is from Representative Nash, and if we can go quickly with the questions and the answers, that would be great. I've got Representative Nash, Elkins, and Bonner. Surprise, surprise, they have IT questions. Representative Nash.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Commissioner, thanks for being here. Appreciate being able to work with you on the Blue Ribbon. You had referenced that you've got roughly 350 to 400 projects that you do each year. Most of those are chargebacks to the folks that you guys serve. Given the fact that there may be budget cuts because of what we're facing, have you begun having internal conversations about staffing changes, possibly shedding staff to reflect the change in the ability of different agencies to spend on things, given that there may be cuts? And I'll just let that one be my question and give my time back to somebody else. But I would appreciate an answer to that, because I do believe it's going to be very, very important. And given that you are a reactionary force more than you are a proactive force for a lot of the stuff that you guys do, would appreciate your answer.
Commissioner Thomas.
Mr. Chair, committee members, Representative Nash, thank you for that question. We certainly at all times evaluate and closely try to monitor kind of the ebb and flow of demand and our capacity to meet that demand. And there's a huge anticipation role connected with that. One of the things that we've seen during the pandemic is, certainly, and this is not unique to the state of Minnesota, we've certainly seen an unprecedented demand on technology resources to help support the many different needs. And I actually anticipate that the demands and requests of technology to help meet these budget constrained times via the use of innovative technology, whether it's robotic process automation or the use of chatbots or digital services. And so we actually would fully anticipate with a need to continue to serve people in more innovative ways and maybe more efficient ways, that the demands on technology are likely to go up. But we continue to evaluate, what that request queue looks like and the impact that that may have on our technologists.
Representative Quam. Quickly. You're muted.
Yeah, I get spoiled by the headphone having the on-off mute. Mr. Chair, what I'm interested in is when IBM and other companies have gone to private organizations and they've sourced the servers and services, what we've gained is a decrease in the FTEs in order to do it in-house so that you save money. We've changed from internal to external on a lot of our hardware. So what kind of FTE savings have we gained? And then we've done all these projects, and in the private sector, when you do these type of software projects, you improve productivity. And when you have improved productivity, you no longer need as many FTEs. So how many FTEs are we being able to save with all of these projects you've done, and also with offloading all the old iron we had? Do you understand what I'm getting towards?
Representative Commissioner Tomes.
Yes, I do. It's a very good question. I appreciate you asking that. Certainly, as we see continued heavy adoption of cloud resources, there's a change in the type of resource that is necessary to support those types of services. And one of the things that I think the industry understands in general is those cloud type resources, whether no matter what cloud provider that you're using, those resources are A, difficult to attract, and B, they command relatively high salaries. And so there's kind of this unique shift that happens, and our ability to continue to attract the type of talent that we currently have at the state as we continue to adopt cloud services in those spaces is going to be really important. I think, and certainly with the the work that we see across the Blue Ribbon Council, there are so many similarities. There isn't this huge public sector, private sector distinction between the work that we do and the work that we see occurring in many of the organizations. When we speak to our CIO partners that are a part of the Blue Ribbon Council, whether it's at a TCF or Land O'Lakes, the way that we are organizing technology across the executive branch is really similar. And certainly the delivery of what we are doing, and the kind of hyper productive delivery that certainly has been highlighted in the last 12 months. We are I think really on par with anything that is happening in any of those environments.
Representative Elkins.
Mr. Chair, just to follow up that we get data and information of the FTEs that have been saved, and we can get that offline. Thank you.
Representative Elkins.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Last year or last 2 years ago when we did our budget, one of the things we did to help balance things is just make across the board cuts to each agency's IT budgets, and I would hope that we wouldn't do that this time, because what ends up being sacrificed is that agencies stop applying things like security patches to their basic software. And right now is not the time to be letting our guard down on investments in cybersecurity in particular. The other comment I would like to make is that we play an important role in all of this as well. One of the reasons why the MinDrive system replacing MinLars went so smoothly is that in conjunction with that project, the legislature had an LCC committee that looked at reforms to our vehicle registration laws where there were actually, conflicts in the law that made it impossible to execute and through this LCC committee, we actually made changes in the law that enabled MnDrive to be implemented smoothly. So I would like us to not see, lose sight of the role that we play in all of this. And I know we're short of time, so I'll keep that short.
I see that more as a comment than a question. Representative Bonner.
Thank you. I'll try to be quick. Commissioner Tomes and I have had many conversations about celebrating our successes, and I want to talk a little, just briefly, for perspective for the group here, because IT seems like this big behemoth, and we don't really get what it means. But some of what the commissioner has said today, for example, having an award-winning dashboard so that citizens all over the state have access to real-time data into what's happening in our state. We may be in an uncomfortable situation, but to be able to have that, we take for granted that not other states didn't have that. When it comes to UI, we had states who were still trying and struggling to pull up a UI system for weeks and even months, while we were having thousands and thousands of folks who not only is able to sign up for benefits, but who are actually receiving them in real time. And that's because of a lot of that work that we did. The cybersecurity attacks that we were able to thwart, even during civil unrest and all of these issues. And so I think we have to be very careful to Representative Elkin's point. By the way, he also often is a fixture on the Blue Ribbon Commission, and appreciate his expertise. But the point being, we have to be very thoughtful about where we make those decisions when it comes to tightening our belts. Certainly we understand that. But the other part of that is also having those people-centered applications. And I guess my, people-centric applications and making government work for real people is my passion. So Commissioner Tarek, Commissioner Holmes, my apologies. My question is really, as we look forward and to this new virtual environment and continue to try to wade through the implications of the pandemic and health issues, what tools do you think that Minute are going to be most critical for Minute in helping us do that modernization in these new virtual environments to keep us centered on the people and the citizens of Minnesota?
Mr. Chair?
Commissioner, quickly.
Yeah, it's a great question, or a part question, part comment, Representative Bonner, and really appreciate that. I think the Blue Ribbon Council work as it relates to the modernization playbook and the recognition that modernization is just a partnership. It is grounded in the principles of understanding our business processes, really diving deep into those business processes, connecting with the people that we're going to impact with services, and then working our way towards solutions and modernization, not a modernization for modernization's sake, not modernizing an existing system to make it new with old business practices, but really that partnership and collaboration that includes so many people, building out capacity in human-centered design that is kind of this really critical, important upfront input loop into how people are actually impacted by the services we're providing. And I certainly am incredibly excited to continue to work with you on that.
Thank you, Commissioner, and members. We're going to move on to our next presenter. Thank you. If you can have your staff stay on the call, we have questions for the about some IT stuff that was done in the Board of Cosmetology, and that's. Thank you for being here, Commissioner, and I know you have someplace else you have to go.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and committee members.
Our next presenter is the Board of Cosmetology Executive Director Fast. If you want to introduce yourself for the record, and before you get started, I know if you wanted to touch on, I know we put money aside for an IT project into the Odyssey Fund. I want to know how that's going, and I guess that's why I want the IT people to stick around, and how much money is left over from what was set aside, and how your agency's going with the COVID shutting down beauty salons for a period, and I'm assuming inspections and that went down. So, Director Fast.
Good morning. Can you hear me, Chair Nelson?
I can hear you.
Okay, for the record, I am Gina Fast, the Executive Director for the board. I am going to attempt to share my screen here. Let's see here.
We can see it.
You can see it. Okay. I'll just kind of go through it this way because there's too many things going on here. So because I know we got to go quick. So anyways, I'm Gina Fast. I'm the Executive Director for the Board of Cosmetology. Thank you for the opportunity to be here to provide you an update regarding the IT projects. The board also provided an update to this committee in February of 2020. So this will be a continuation of that. This slide is a brief timeline overview. In July 2019, the Legislative Advisory Commission gave approval on several Board of Cosmetology IT projects. From July of 19 to March 31st of 2020, the IT funds were only allowed to be used to support the planning phase that included requirements gathering. In February 2020, a status update was also given to this committee, and we have been in continuous partnership with Minute throughout the entire process. The board has technology projects broken into external and internal projects. On this slide, you will see that our external projects include displaying inspection reports and executed orders online, as well as giving licensees the ability to request certification of licensure through their account management page. Internal projects on this slide, you'll see that there are 3 of them. We have the internal onboarding and HR, automated complaint processing, and purchasing. Included in our 2020 update was that the Board of Cosmetology, along with 17 other boards, moved to SMART at the Department of Administration, and we were able to leverage their existing purchasing solution. Successful. Getting to kind of the meat of the current status of each of the projects, and this is going in a chronological order. So the internal onboarding and HR, an RFP was issued, and the contract was awarded in August of 2020. We are currently in the design and prototype phase with a go live in June of 2021. After that project is done, we will kick off the inspection reports and executed orders. An RFP was issued in the same, it was a dual RFP, and it was issued, and the contract was as well awarded in August of 2020. And we estimate the kickoff to be June 2021 when the internal onboarding and HR project is completed. The certificate of licensure project, the requirements phase was completed in February 2020, and we are in the requirements validation and user story development with a spring 2022 go live. This work is being done in collaboration with the Center for Excellence. And lastly, our complaint process, it's very similar to where we're at with the certificates of licensure. The requirements phase was completed in February of 2020. We're in the requirements validation and user story development with a kickoff in spring of 2022. And again, this project is being done in collaboration with the Center for Excellence. As I said earlier, all projects are being done in collaboration with Minute. They've been there every step of the way. The projects are being timed out responsibly to manage the resources of all internal and external partners. And that includes, like I said, the continuous support of Minute.
And this Fast, I don't know if you're moving back and forth or where your microphone, but we're having trouble. You're going in and out when you're speaking.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay.
If you want to lean in, that might help.
Okay, so those are the slides. To answer a couple of your other questions, the internal budget that you had teed up at the very beginning, Chair Nelson, the internal budget, I'll go back to the previous slide here. Currently, the ITA approval was for $375,000. Currently, the RFP for the onboarding and HR came in at just over just under $43,000. So currently, there's $332,125 remaining in that, and the only other project that would come out of that would be the complaint process. We are not at the point where we have with the Center for Excellence, a price or a quote that will be upcoming in the next year. The external projects, there was only External projects, the RFP had a total of $75,000, or sorry, the approval was $75,000, and the inspection reports and executed orders bid came in at $21,875. And so that leaves $53,125 remaining in that allotment. And then to kind of, I guess, off the cuff to talk a little bit about the COVID, the pandemic. When salons were shut down, I think it was in March. I don't actually even have it was such a long year. Of course, our inspectors were also not able to go into salons and do inspections. Several of them had been redeployed, as Commissioner Schowalter indicated. They're pulling staff from other agencies. Several of our inspectors were moved over to the Department of Health to become contract tracers. So we supported the COVID initiative by, I guess, loaning out the staff. Most of them had come back when salons reopened. When salons reopened in June, we, about a week in, we pretty much, we started back doing inspections, and we not only look for review inspections based on Board of Cosmetology laws and rules. We're also supporting the COVID initiative by looking at some of the primary items that are expected of businesses, such as the business operational plan in order to open, mask wearing, 6 feet of distance, and we take an education approach. If people are unsure of how to create a business plan, we set them up with the Department of Labor to help them assist with that. But yes, our inspections were basically shut down for an entire quarter, but now we're back out in the field.
Okay, Representative Elkins, you had a question.
More comments again. We've seen here an exemplary transition in the way a particular board has improved its IT operations by reaching out to Minute. Most of our boards and commissions, constitutional offices, our colleges and universities actually aren't legally under Minute oversight. But most of them, including ourselves, would benefit by working more closely with Minute the way the Board of Cosmetology has done in this case. And Mr. Chair, it's largely because of the push that you and I made related to the Odyssey Fund request about a year ago, that we find ourselves in this much happier place, where I think in this case, Ms. Bass would confirm that this has been a productive working relationship with Minute that will continue, and is a good role model for how I think we should approach some of the other boards, agencies, bodies that are not currently formally under Minute oversight. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Representative Nash. Representative Nash.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I've been having a little bit of technology difference. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Got kids on the internet here doing remote school. We've got just a handful of minutes left. I'm wondering, Mr. Chair, can we have Ms. Fast come back to do a more detailed dive? Both you and I have talked about the utilization of this Odyssey Fund request and transfer, and I was hoping that we might have a little more time to devote to that.
We can see what our schedule goes, but yes, it's we have commissioners that were a little long and a little wordy, and we have members who ask questions that are long and wordy, and then the answers coming back are long. It seems to be that way. It happens always with this committee. So if you have a question, we could specifically about the Odyssey Fund. I know I'd like to know where.
At risk of being accused of being long and wordy, maybe you and I can talk about the approach for this, because I know we're both concerned and all of our members are concerned with this as well. I just think that it merits conversation more than 6 minutes allows.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Representative. Any other questions? Ms. Fast, I know we've had you before us before, and it seems like we're always harping about this, but it's at times your board seems to be a little spendy with their money, with the state's money, and I know you're getting surplus money coming in if you've got the amount of money you were able to set aside in the Odyssey Fund. The question gets to be is, are your fees set at the proper level? I know we're not supposed to collect more. You're supposed to collect enough fees to operate your department, but we're not supposed to be collecting more money than that and creating large caches of money to be spent on other things. So if we do have you come back, if you could address that, or maybe in the next couple of minutes address that question. I mean, how are your fees structured? That you're getting able to come up with the extra dollars that we're able to put in the Odyssey Fund this fast?
Thank you, Chair Nelson and members. I think when I testified last year, and the agency grew from several staff, and we're a general fund agency. So for many, many years, the board was not nearly appropriated the fees that they were collecting. So that has been a work in progress between the board, and the legislature. I think when I testified last year, we look at vacancies, we look at leaves of absences. Some of those vacancies and leaves of absences prior to being with SMART. SMART has been a wonderful transition, but when we would have positions go vacant, it could be months because of HR. I don't have the power to post a position. I don't have the power to put an RFP out. We would go months without staff, even though we might have pushed up the position to be posted, it went through processes that are outside of our control that took months. We also have, we had someone out on military leave. The FMLA and leaves of absence. I've had employees out for a full year leave of absence, which is allowed under the union contract, but we can't fill the position because we get notifications every 6 weeks that, okay, the person's going to need another 6 weeks, another 6 weeks. So I think sometimes with the smaller agencies, because so much of our funding does go to staffing, that when there's turnover or when there's, like I said, leaves of absences, those can quickly generate extra, I don't want to call it extra funding, but unspent funds. And so I think that's, a primary component of where things are. And, as we've moved to SMART, there's been learning, and we're constantly learning about how to best manage the FTE up and down to make sure we're not going over budget as well.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Fast, and hopefully we'll see what happens in the Representative Nash in the future, how our time is allotted, and maybe delve into this again. Members, our next meeting is Thursday, January 28th. We do have 2 bills up, House File 23 and House File 9, and we need to get them dealt with on Thursday. And members, with that, this meeting is adjourned.